The guy who's my boss the entire time, the one who hired me, he had quit about a month before I quit to go do a startup. And I had already known at the time that I was like, going to quit. And so he quits and I'm like, oh, good luck, dude. Month later, I quit. I tell my team and everybody's like, again, doing the whole like, oh, wow, like that's going to be hard, but like, congratulations. That's awesome. I call him, my old boss, as of a month before. And I'm like, yo, I just quit. And he goes, why? It was almost like he said, like, you idiot. Like, why? And I was like, I'm starting this company. And he's like, oh, do you want money? And I was like, okay, A, whiplash. B, like that to me, it perfectly encapsulates this, like this person whose respect I so desperately wanted. But I don't think I ever impressed him with like my work product while I was at Goldman. In an instant, it's like, oh, good job. You're like doing startup stuff now.
Thank you for tuning in to the Mile 40 podcast. I am Bishoy Tadros, the author of Break Barriers and Audacious, both of which are sold on Amazon. And I invite you to join me as I engage with guests to discuss those bounce back moments that we encounter on our personal journey. Mile 40 is a forum to learn about how athletes, professionals, and leaders of all backgrounds stare down moments in life where the only option is to rise up. The Mile 40 podcast strives to remind listeners that the comeback is always greater than the setback. Welcome back to another episode of the Mile 40 podcast. Thank you all for continuing to tune in. I greatly appreciate it. It's been so incredible watching the growth of the show. And as I say over and over again, none of this would be possible without you guys, without your support, without your continued feedback. If you haven't already, please be sure to hit subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, check out the show notes. Pick up a copy of Break Barriers or Audacious. I will get that out to you. Without further ado, I am super excited for today's guest. Today I have Dom D'Alexander. He's a fitness industry builder, community leader, and advocate for independent coaches. A New Yorker by way of DC, his passion for training and entrepreneurship led him to start Somble, a platform helping coaches turn their workouts into thriving businesses. Today, Somble is used by hundreds of coaches across the world to build custom training platforms, scale communities, and craft powerful brands, all on their own terms. Dom, thank you for joining me, my man.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, man. I really appreciate you taking the time out. And I love how we were introduced via the Wellness Growth Mastermind. Shout out to Brian. I've already called him out several times on this podcast because he has been the source for several of the guests over this season and last season. And, I know we got to connect in person yesterday, which was pretty awesome. I think your bio is really high level. So let's just take a step back really quick. Let's get the audience to get to know you a little bit more personally. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up, where life kicked off and how things started for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm from Virginia originally. I grew up in a household that, by any like kind of definition was pretty normal, I would say. Great parents, kind of a community around us that they had built of friends and family friends, and really like a really amazing supportive environment. But some components of that early life, I think, definitely still define me today and kind of inform how I look at the world. And some of the important ones I'd say are like my parents were really big into having people come over for dinner or going to our friends' houses for dinner. And so dining was very communal. And I think as somebody who now spends a lot of time talking to the other people, like that's like my job at our business is to like talk to everybody else and bring people together and create experiences for people to come together. And I think that was kind of forged then. And then another big piece of that early life was like, I was 2 years old and my dad is a big road biker, was just putting me in this little carriage thing and biking me around Northern Virginia. And he'd go and like have beers with his friends and ride 50 miles. And I would just be like 2 years old sitting there. And those are some of my earliest memories. And that combination, I think, of like fitness with socialization was so core to like all the people I looked up to. And then it happened to be that they all were entrepreneurs themselves, my dad and his friends. And it's funny now in hindsight, it's like, oh, that's how you end up I guess starting a fitness company in your mid
Well,
20s.
it's really cool to hear you reflect on an early memory like that, because it's just it's a concept that's come up previously on this show. I'm a recent father, and I've really thrown in the fact that you know, kids watch what you do, and they take that in, and you don't realize when you're developing core memories at a young age. And I think all of us can agree to the fact that we sometimes remember things from our childhood, and we wonder why we remember those things but not other things, and why those things stuck out in particular, and how those things, you know intentionally or unintentionally, shaped us, and how we end up behaving as adults. So that's a really interesting call out. Did you have any siblings?
I've got a younger brother, and this is a funny example. Think of what you're talking about. Where like we're very close, me and my brother. Got a little side hustle together. We talk weekly, not far more frequently than that actually. And but it wasn't always like that. And I think generally kids tend to like adopt or reject things that their parents are doing. And I certainly adopted. I was more of an adopter, and he was more of a rejecter. And I think over time we both sort of like found ourselves, and he's started to adopt a lot more of the things that they were doing, and and I've also kind of found my own version of those things instead of just sort of cheaply copying. And it's made us a lot closer, but it's all through the lens of who your parents make you. Like obviously the community around has a huge influence on that. A lot's been written on that, but like it does start with those, like that AI program that your brain's just going to be running in the background that eventually you're going to be talking about in therapy when you're in your 20s or 30s or 40s. Like that starts getting inputs when you're 1, 2, 3 years old. And a lot of the stuff I'd mentioned a moment ago, like I hadn't given it any real thought until I'd actually started doing therapy a couple of years ago. And you just start to realize that you can draw a line without too many kind of like loose dotted sections all the way back to those experiences, starting at where you're at now.
No, you're absolutely spot on. And, my next question kind of correlates to that. You mentioned your father was an entrepreneur. Talk to me about some of the values that were instilled in you just at a young age. Like, you talked about the importance of gatherings and dinners, but, elaborate further on specific values that were kind of instilled in you.
Yeah, I mean he would work from like 3:30 or 4 in the morning until like 1. And granted, he built houses and buildings, and construction industries generally shifted earlier, but he was shifted earlier than the construction industry. And I think two things came of that. One, like if you make your own schedule, you can absolutely grind. Like you go, I'm going to make my own schedule and I'm going to grind. Like like 9 to 5 just doesn't even really. You don't grow up. If you don't grow up thinking you need a 9 to 5, it's like kind of a weird concept, which I think is probably better to think of it like that. And then two, like 1 p.m. comes around and like that dude's going on a bike ride and meeting up with some of his buddies. And like this, we'll get into it, but like I think there was a lot in there that's held me back over the years. I think you have to really earn the ability over time to truly set your own schedule and to devote hours a day to things that are fundamentally leisure. And it's really easy to trick yourself that that leisure is good for you, especially if it involves alcohol, which again, that's a tangent on a tangent. But yeah, he was incredibly hardworking. He was very good at balancing work and play. And I think that it's a long term goal of mine, is to be harder working, but also to better enjoy and be present in the moments that kind of come at the end of that work.
What about the role that your mom played?
She's the rock. He was the kind of the the ups and downs. She worked early, and then she was a full time mom for years, and then started working again. She's incredibly thoughtful, just a very very introspective, but also communicative person. And I think if there's something I look up to her the most, it's probably that. And it's something I definitely seek in others and try to work on in myself. Like bullheadedness definitely has its place as from like a momentum and hard work perspective, but that only takes you so far. Like thoughtfulness, I think, is probably at the core of any job that's really, really well done or a life really well lived. And um, that's something I've picked up from her and just tried to be better at, because my bias is certainly not that.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's something to be said about that, and I'm kind of connecting some dots now as you're, in the role that you're in now, and I think a lot of founders will agree with this that hard work works for sure, but hard work works even better if you're thoughtful on the outside when it comes to how you're managing relationships. Like you can get yourself very far with hard work, but you'll open doors that you probably never envisioned opening if you can take a step back and think about how to go the extra mile for your stakeholders.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, if
yeah.
I may, like it's everything is balance. Everything is balance. And I listen to so many other founders and I assume that what they're saying works for them. But a lot of times what they're saying is like, it boils down to operating in some sort of extreme. Um, and I'm not good at being like super extreme. I think if when I'm at my best, I'm extremely balanced. And that's something I'm trying to, that's like a learning curve, right? But what that means in practice is like, I have to discover how to work really hard, but also be extremely thoughtful, because those things do often come at the expense of each other. And there's like, there's like the founder archetype that's more like the kind of, it's actually hard. It's funny because it's hard to think of there's a founder archetype that's like the Steve Jobs, right? It's
Mm,
just the like
locked
screaming,
in.
working insane
Yeah.
hours, like, right? And that's obviously the glorified one. And then there's the other one, and I feel like none of these people are famous, but I know a few people like this, and they're doing a good job. And it's almost the other side of the spectrum. They're like quiet, and they lead by example, and they're very kind to the people around them. And if I could be one or the other, I'd certainly be the latter. But if you spend too much time operating as the latter, you can miss out on some of that motivation and intensity that like gets the job done. So it's just finding that balance. It's so hard, but I think it's sort of like my own personal journey as an entrepreneur is what does that look like?
Yeah. And, as you speak, I think of some of the previous founders that have been on the show, and I can't help but think about the different approaches and there it's a little you have to gamify it in a way, right? Like you have to hold yourself accountable. And you have to be very self-aware. I think self-awareness is probably the most critical skill that a founder can have, whether it's self-aware just for their own sake or for the sake of the people that potentially work for them or their clientele. And in hearing you kind of think through this, I can tell that's a muscle that you're consistently working. And I think what would be helpful for the audience is to kind of talk a little bit about the trajectory with regards to how you got here. So let's talk about high school, college years. What were those like?
Yeah. And just because I hate when people don't start like a pitch with what the thing actually does, if
Yeah.
I can take a second to say
Yeah.
what here is, it's like
Yeah.
I'm a pre-seed founder with a product that I think is approaching product market fit, but maybe not quite there yet. So it's like, how did I end up in this spot? I spent most of my early life, like, honestly, I wanted to join the military, and we can get into why that
Well,
was,
yeah,
but
let's go there. We'll have
uh,
that happen.
yeah, this is going to sound really self-critical, and maybe it is, but I think a lot of it came from a place. I played sports growing up. I played a lot of different sports growing up, and I was never particularly great at any of them. I was, I think, particularly mediocre at all of them. And what fell out of that, so I had that, and that was kind of juxtaposed against this like uh, this side of me that I love to read, and I'd get complimented on like, I read like Lord of the Rings cover to cover when I was like 7 or 8. And then I remember following it up with like To Kill a Mockingbird, and people were like, whoa, dude. And I didn't actually do anything impressive, but like having people be like, you're smart, really, that AI system I was talking about earlier, like grabbed onto that, was like, go be smart, be special. And then like I knew I wanted to play sports because I love physical activity. And I was just never that good at it. And like I wanted to play football. And the more, and I like, frankly, I was like, I didn't like contact. I didn't like pain. I didn't like running into people all day. And the more, and I like rejected that thought. Like it was like, you're not special when you're playing. Like you have to figure out how to be special at that. Like reading books isn't good enough. Like go out and win on the field. And what kind of came out of that was like, what would be the ultimate thing that I could go out and do that would just like silence the haters that weren't even there. Like I was obviously the hater in this scenario, and it was like special forces. And it had nothing to do with like um, love of country, which I've that's truly another conversation. But the it drove, it was like, what would be the ultimate way of being like, I'm actually a badass and not like totally afraid to do like tackling drills at football. And it's funny to look at it like that in hindsight. And again, that was kind of an observation that came out of therapy. But I did spend many years wanting to go be that badass. And I even had some really cool experiences along the way that cemented the desire to do it. Like I met Rob O'Neill, the guy who
Oh
killed
yeah, Bin
Bin
Laden.
Laden. Yeah. I met him not long after he did the deed. And it was a whole lot of him telling a story and us trying to read between the lines. Like, are you saying that you? And he's like, I did. Yeah, maybe I did do that. It was crazy, right? But that was like a kid who wanted to play football meeting Tom Brady. So I was really on that train for a while. I went to college, went to Virginia Tech, and that was sort of where like the rubber was about to meet the road, because while that's not a military school, there's ROTC. And I was like, I don't want to do that. Like I want the social experience, having fun with the social experience, and like slowly dawning on me, like, maybe you're not that guy that you like. What were your motivations for doing that? And around that time, through effectively random happenstance, I had found like investing my own money to be like not that I had very much at the time, but I found that like an interesting intellectual exercise. Virginia Tech happens to have the largest student managed equity fund in the country. Applied to that, was like, got in my freshman year, which was pretty cool. And then that ended up defining my college experience from like an educational perspective. Learned 10 times more of, investing $5 million for the school than I was in my classes. And then that was the path to eventually Goldman Sachs, which took me to New York. So that was and I remember even when I got on that path, I was like, if I'm doing this finance thing, again, it's like quiet the haters that aren't even there. It's like, what is the equivalent to like, you wanted to go special forces. It was like, all right, well, let's go do the hardest job we can find in finance. And then that's where the rubber really meets the road.
Well,
Yeah.
we're gonna get there, and I love the way that you open up about it, because there's a lot of authenticity in the way that you shared that, because clearly there was some figuring out to do, and there was a lot of, I don't know the right word, but you know jumping around from those two ends of the spectrum. You don't see that too often, and I guess what I'm trying to get at is, and I think it's something that we'll talk about as we kind of build this, but at that point in time, where was the root of your happiness?
I wasn't thinking about it too hard. And that's, it's, so I am, well, I keep it pretty tight. I'm pretty anxious as well. And the anxiety is like a very physical sensation. It's a knot. And I would find, like, I find happiness in spending time with people that I love. I find happiness in physical activity. And I was getting a lot of those things in college. Um, but I was also getting a lot of, we'll call it like false happiness, where that's like the ego just being sort of like padded, and it lets you fall asleep at night. And that would be things like being like, oh, I got the internship at Goldman Sachs. Everybody's going to respect me for that. So as long as I was spending enough time with people that I loved and getting some physical activity in, and as long as I was padding the ego, like I was, I would have, I was happy, and and people around me would have said, this is a happy person, but I was like building the knot that is there to this day that I'm still working through unwinding. So that's the best I can answer that question, because I certainly was happy and I was finding happiness in everything I was doing around me, but there was a false element to it as well, that I think every day I'm trying to work away from.
Coming from Virginia, how familiar with you with Wall Street? Like not the
Uh,
investment side of Wall Street, but the culture of Wall Street.
Very little. And I remember like showing up in this cool like inside access day my junior year as part of the investment group, and like, dude, the energy got me. I was like, I've never seen something like this. Like, these people are so smart. They're so much more self-aware than I was expecting. Like, because your first image is like what you see in the movies. It's like the Wolf of Wall Street. Like, everybody kind of seems like, I guess, excuse the language, dickheads. Like, you're just like, okay, these are not people I'd want to interface with. But as you actually met more and more of the people, it was like, these are like smart, kind people. Now, fast forward a couple of years, that's both true and not true. But at the time, like, it got me. We were moving so fast and I was learning so much. And that was my first taste of how fast the world can move and how smart people can really be. I mean, there's amazing people at Virginia Tech, but like, you're in the hills of Appalachia. Like, the pace is subdued. I was hooked though, like absolutely hooked.
You worked in the office downtown?
Yeah.
So I remember my first day at JP Morgan. I remember walking through the doors at Bear Stearns 383 Madison Avenue. And I remember the imposter syndrome that immediately hit the minute I walked through those doors. And then I also remember, meeting the traders for the first time and just feeling like they were speaking a different language, and a language that I don't know that I was ever wired to speak, just given the level of intellect. This was, again, first impression. Similar to you, I then learned a lot more along the way. But talk to me about, the first day walking through those doors, coming off the West Side Highway.
Yeah. I mean, I remember it like clear as day. So I like hard rock music, like
Yeah,
uh, Linkin Park, Breaking
sure.
Benjamin, stuff like that, right? I walked in, like, I heard Sonora, I was like, I'm gonna fuck shit up. Music just blasting as loud as humanly possible. And what's so funny to me about that then, like now, looking back at it, is like there wasn't one like tactical, cohesive thought. It was literally just like I was literally pumping the loudest noise I possibly could pump into my ears. And it, like, in hindsight, like, that's just fear. That's like I was afraid to, like, I guess, really step up to whatever was about to come in front of me. And I was just trying to operate on like pure adrenaline, and it manifested in the first week because, like, you walk in, I go to Virginia Tech, and there's all these like, it's the Ivy League kids around me, Duke, these amazing schools. And for the most part, they don't have any practical experience in what we're doing. And in my head at the time, I'm like, I've like literally been managing $5 million for 4 years. Like, even if I'm now selling currencies to hedge funds, like, there's some crossover here. Like, we're talking about like the swaps product. Like, oh, I know what this is. And like, somebody would start asking me a question, I'd like cut them off with what I thought the answer would be. And they're like, dude, we're not talking about that. Like, can you just be quiet for a second and listen to what I'm saying and then answer the question? I'm like, oh, sorry. And I had enough EQ to be like, after that, be like, I am genuinely sorry about that. I'll do a better job of listening. But it wasn't getting through to, like, it wasn't really processing to me that, like, hey, you don't know shit, and you're going to have to really be quiet and really listen to what these people are saying. So I look at those early days as like I was operating on adrenaline, and very quickly that kind of turned into the fear to ask the question. Because it's, as you know, everybody's really smart, everybody's really hardworking, and you're about to be tested. If you haven't thought all the way through that, there's going to be quite a rude awakening on that floor, which I certainly experienced.
Were you always an innovator?
No, um, that's a new thing. I'd argue that's actually only started happening for me in like the last 12 months. And what I mean by that is like, if you gave me lanes, I could drive rather quickly. But I was certainly like, I certainly saw the lanes, needed the lanes, and was not the type of person to go off-roading.
Well,
And
I mean,
so,
banking is very much a stay in your lane type of career,
yes,
and so, now that I've asked you that question, is that transition a struggle? Because like for context, where I had issues was I was an innovator, and I was one of those people where would constantly question, you know, just because we've been doing something for like the last 100 years doesn't necessarily mean there isn't a better way to do this. And as you and I both know, they generally don't like that kind of approach. It's more so like, hey, it's been working for the last 100 years, so we're going to keep doing it for the next 100 years. And so once I, found my way out, it was so natural for me because finally I was in an arena where I could ask these questions. How did you feel about that transition?
yeah, it was. I had an amazing crutch in the form of a co-founder who, basically like my co-founder Ian is very contrarian, very much an ideas guy, and the sort of person to like not only ask why a rule might be in place, but maybe feel like just an inherent disdain that there's any rule at all. So I mostly relied on him, especially in the beginning, with starting the company. But it's always been a challenge for me to kind of like not necessarily think outside the box, but like ask if something really needs to be there in the first place as like a condition, as opposed to immediately get into like operating off of that condition. I'm
Yeah.
more linear for sure.
Yeah. Um, let's talk about how many years were you at Goldman?
Just under 3.
Okay. So let's talk about like the evolution throughout those 3 years. And I want to get to the point where you kind of realized that something had to be done. So talk to me about the evolution, throughout that time.
Yeah, I had there was this moment I remember like I was like, I know everybody is going to think I do like I'm good at this if to actually put it quite simply, it was like if I go home right now and I make this pitch for this trade, they're going to be like, "Good job, Dom. Like that's what we were hoping you would do." And I was like, "I know how to do it." And I was like, "Why am I not doing it?" And I remember just wondering, I remember where exactly where I was walking down the street on my way to my apartment, like some lightless box in East Village. Like, okay, just do it when you get just do it. And I got home and I was like, no, like why not? Like what is this like mental block that's keeping you from like pursuing this vigorously? And I sat with that like for forever, and it took me to a pretty dark place because everybody around me is very smart and everybody around me is working very, very hard. And I had enough wherewithal to work like pretty hard, and I was smart enough to at least get by, and I had a high enough EQ that the people like generally liked me. But I was just like, why am I unwilling to take this to like the next step? And at the time, I would tell myself this thing that was like, it was like, oh, like this is not like you're not doing like societal good in this job. Like it was very like
Where's the purpose? Where's the
yeah,
fulfillment?
where's the purpose, right? And I've come to understand that that was a bit of a cop out. I think it was more like if you I needed to be like you can't fail at things you don't try.
Yeah.
And I was basically trying to do Goldman running on like vibes,
Yeah.
which actually takes you surprisingly far. Like,
I mean, I can agree with this. I was there. Same exact thing for me.
yeah, okay, there you go. Like, people, EQ can take you quite far. And the tricky thing I think what that episode really showed was like, I had some self work to do if I was ever going to be great at that. But instead of doing that self work, I know all this sounds so self critical, but it's not. There's no like
No.
self hate with this. It's just sort of like
it's real.
The therapy. Yeah, I mean, it's literally what I think happened. But when I got the opportunity to go to leave and do Somble, like what I realized, sort of, I guess, subconsciously and acted on was like, there's a lot of people here that I really respect, and they're really hardworking. And if I just quit this job like right now and go start a company, they're all gonna respect me. And you don't actually have like, surprise, anybody can quit their job and start a company. You can do it right now, like about anything. And it doesn't actually have to necessarily be a good idea. You don't have to have a plan in place, but like people are immediately going to be like, wow, like I really respect your ability to like take risk. Like, oh, that's so cool that you're doing that. And that, it was interesting because like if those two dots connect very closely to me, that sensation of going like, I can't win here, or I'm unwilling to do what it takes to win here. And then ejecting from there to kind of like feed the ego from all these people that I really wanted that validation from. I wish that had a lot less to do with why I left my job to start Somble. But as far as I'm concerned, all the other reasons I wanted to start Somble, why I think it's a great idea as a business, what it can do for the world, they're like for some reason less interesting to me than like that side of things, because it really informs like the self-work that I have to do every single day now to actually put in that work and to actually win in a competitive arena. I mean, actually, like if you don't mind, I'll tell a really quick story about when I quit, because it's kind of, I think it encapsulates it perfectly. My the guy who was my boss the entire time, the one who hired me, he had quit about a month before I quit to go do a startup. And I had already known at the time that I was like, going to quit. And so he quits, and I'm like, oh, good luck, dude. Month later, I quit. I tell my team, and everybody's like, again, doing the whole like, oh, wow, like that's going to be hard, but like, congratulations. That's awesome. I call him, my old boss, as of a month before, and I'm like, yo, I just quit. And he goes, why? I mean, it was almost like he said, like, you idiot, like, why? And I was like, oh, I'm starting this company. And he's like, oh, do you want money? And I was like, okay, A, whiplash. B, like that to me, it perfectly encapsulates this person whose respect I so desperately wanted. And I don't think, again, he thought I was a high EQ guy enough that he was going to give me some money, but I don't think I ever impressed him with like my work product while I was at Goldman. To just see, like, in an instant, it's like, oh, good job, you're like doing startup stuff now. I just think that story is like, it
That's
encapsulates
so
that perfectly.
That's really, really powerful. And it says a lot. And I want to ask you, I mean, the banking industry does something where it makes you feel really safe, right? If you're on the inside, right? Like it makes you feel like you're not going to make more money anywhere else. You're not going to get the kind of opportunity anywhere else. That the only way up is to, climb the ladder, get yourself to, where, those MDs are, and live that kind of life. And it makes you really think twice, more than twice actually, before you make any sort of move, whether it's leaving to start your own venture or leaving to go somewhere else or even leaving industries altogether, which is what I did. And I remember, thinking to myself, like, are they right? Like, am I never going to, you know, be as successful anywhere else? Am I never going to find success and the again, the vibe of success is really kind of like what they're also selling you on, but you didn't realize it at the moment. Did you have to navigate that?
Yeah. Well, it really just like messes with your perception of wealth and money. Like I remember you get like a snippet of how much somebody's making, And at the time in like my early 20s, I'm like, that person's so much older. Now I know that person's like 30. This is a person like, they were 30 at the time. I'm 29 right now. So I'm like, okay, I'm basically the age of those people. I'm like, there were people making $1 million a year with effectively a corporate job. And now I know how much people actually like make in all these different industries. And it's like, you make like, if you're lucky, you make a fifth of that, and you're gonna for a while. So, and then I'd also know people who are in their late 20s who are like, yeah, I haven't saved a dime at working at Goldman, making hundreds of thousands, like several $100,000 a year, pushing up to $1. And it's like that really like what everybody was doing. And many of them are going to be successful at this, which I'm sure will piss the rest of the world off, but it's going to be true. Like they're just betting on their future earnings. Like they're going, I'm going to make a ton of money. I'm going to work super hard. I'm going to spend it all now. Eventually I'll make enough. And there's like, I can't speak in detail about what that, I know plenty of people in their mid 30s who like make a ton of money and also tell me that it feels like they have none. That's a whole other thing. I can't speak on that because I'm not there. But like that really messes with your perception of money. But it also makes you a lot more comfortable being like, sure, I'll quit my job because I'm going to make money later. And I grew up around a bunch of entrepreneurs who were just constantly betting on their future earnings. And I just worked with a bunch of people who were like, screw it, you're going to make millions later. It's only been in the last couple of years I've actually started to think about like, okay, a salary, like you need to like you could like make some money and like save it, like make some more money and save it. And candidly, maybe this isn't such a self-aware comment, but like I'll probably never stop doing things that feel like within a couple of years they could have some sort of massive payout, or at least like ladder up into something via the ownership in that thing or the eventual success of that thing. And that's certainly informed by my childhood and by my early career. But yeah, it's a weird place to think about money, and try not to spend too much time thinking about what my earnings potential would have been these last few years if I wasn't on startup salary.
Well, I mean, totally get that. So now let me ask you, I remember the feeling in my gut when I gave my notice and how happy, I was like instantly.
Yeah.
How was that for you?
You see it. The listeners can't see the beaming smile, but it's
Yeah.
one of the great, like, I didn't realize how much that job was like killing me on the inside. For all the reasons I've already explained as we've been talking. But like I had a smile on the whole time when I was working there, but damn, it eats at you, especially when you're kind of like fighting the demons the whole way. And I mean, yeah, remember it clear as day, deep COVID. I was in an apartment with like three guys and my girlfriend, and we had this, like, it was hilarious. It was like an entire investment bank in there because everybody had a different job in banking. And I just remember standing there just like, we're done. It's done. Like I remember doing like the last test. Hey everybody, all right, I'll talk to you later. Because I actually gave 2 weeks, which is super rare in finance. I was like, I will be here till the end of, like, I don't need to go, right? Like, wrap some stuff up, said goodbye to everybody, and just sat there like with the largest weight off my shoulders. And to this day, like the stress I experience starting Somble and building that every day, well, it is in magnitude greater than anything I experienced at Goldman. The flavor of it is just like far much more palatable. It is so much better. It's so much more. I grow because of it. It doesn't necessarily make me want to run from it as much as the stress I felt in that job.
Hey, Mile 40 fam. I get asked a lot about my training programs and how I set myself up for success to cross finish lines all over the world. Well, I'm going to let you in on a secret. Recovery is half the battle. And in order to get that recovery, I rely on clean sources of protein. That's why my go-to protein shake is Owen. Only what you need. I have one after every single workout. 100% vegan and plant-based, Owen's plant-based shakes use a multi-source protein blend of pea, pumpkin seed, and flax seeds to include all essential amino acids to promote optimal daily health. Uncompromised taste. Owen brings together the essential elements of advanced nutrition, amazingly clean ingredients, functional superiority, and uncompromised taste. Now go ahead go to www.liveowen.com. That's spelled LIVEOWYN.com. Use code MILE40 for 20% off your next purchase. Only what you need. I know looking back, despite the fact that I went through a similar experience, like I don't regret it, because I do feel like it was a, a chapter in life that perhaps I needed to equip myself with, in order to do what I do now at the level that I do it. But you know, it's one of those things where like you look back on and you almost want to regret it, but you don't, because like that's not the attitude that I think like high performers have. You can't you have to always kind of look at the learning moments, and you have to look at, the opportunity that came through it. And there was a lot that I got from it myself that a lot of times I kind of push to the bottom. Like it's definitely not the first thing I'm talking about when someone was like, "Hey, like what was your tenure like? Like what'd you take away from it?" Usually I start with exactly what we're talking about today, and the reasons why I felt like I needed to get out. But ultimately, I look back and I do, have to acknowledge that it was the ability to navigate the ups and downs of that career that I think equipped me for where I am today. Talk to me a little bit about, now when you think about Somble and what you're doing, the skill set that you picked up during those 3 years at Goldman that you feel really prepared you for the ups and downs of today.
Well, it's just like I think that was my first time in the arena, right? And it was like it was just it shined a spotlight on 1,000 things that I was going to have to be better at if I was going to succeed in an arena at that level. So it's not necessarily like anyone hard or eat. If there's no hard, I picked up zero hard skills that helped me. What selling currencies to hedge funds has absolutely nothing to do with trying to get fitness coaches to use the tech platform. Um, but just like I think that was the basis of going like, okay, what got you here is certainly not going to get you there. And it was where I started to have the first inklings of something that I live by right now, which is like you're just trying to compress the iteration cycle to like as fast as humanly possible. Like be better for everybody around you and for your business, as opposed to like show them how smart you are and why your idea is super. It's like none of that matters. Like be more self-aware, be harder working. That was what I think had to take away from the experience. And the experience at Goldman was really just like what happens when you get thrown into the fire with some of the smartest, hardworking people, smartest and most hardworking people you'll ever meet. And those people are also in startup land and in tech. And I feel much more prepared at kind of like the self level, to at least make myself better to rise to the occasion. That's probably my biggest takeaway, because otherwise, I mean, it's such a different job.
It's not the hard skills. I agree with you. It's definitely not. But I think it is exactly, as you said, it's that kind of takeaway. Um, once you're equipped and comfortable, in that arena, there are very few arenas, professionally speaking, that are going to be as um, I don't think combative is the right word, but in a way, combative.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's playing a sport, like a really
yeah,
intense sport.
it's literally like going to war every day,
Yeah,
or entering the ring every day, I should say.
for sure.
In the world of banking, once the market opens to when it closes, you're kind of in the middle of the ring, and so I resonate with that. And earlier on, you had mentioned, you were at that point where you were wondering, like, if there was a grander purpose, and if there was, some sort of meaning behind what you're doing. And um, when I think about what you're doing now, I have to ask, was was that feeling of like looking for that fulfillment really starting to nudge you a little bit more around like, all right, like I need to make sure that, every morning I'm waking up and I'm part of something that matters. Did that start to kind of really knock?
Yeah, but through kind of a weird roundabout lens where like I remember thinking like I love to cook and I can log 8 hours for a meal that takes 7 minutes to eat and be like, that was the time could not have been more well spent. Um, and I remember thinking that while kind of also holding in my head that thought I mentioned earlier about like, you're not going to go home and write an email for 2 hours about like a pitch idea. Um, and kind of wondering like, one of these has such a serious mental blocker that I'm not willing to put in the effort, and the other one feels effortless. So if you're going to go out and like compete and still try to do things that have like enormous upside for you and for your family and for everybody around you, like you got to get closer to like stuff you actually just want to do and that suits you so that you're not like fighting the ego and the insecurities the entire time, but rather like harnessing them. And so that was through that lens, I was like, yes, I need, like, what are the things that legitimately interest me? Now, Somble itself came about through, like, it wasn't my idea. And it was very sort of like opportunistic and situational due to one of my best friends and what his wife was going through. But because I had that love for fitness, as I'd mentioned earlier in the conversation, that I do really attribute to my dad, and it was something I was spending a ton of time on. When there was an opportunity to build in that space, I was like, okay, well, this is at least way, way, way closer to something that like I like spending my free time learning about.
With regards to your relationship with fitness, was it something you kept up, throughout your time at Goldman? Were you like constantly,
Yeah,
yeah, out there, especially in New York?
yeah, yeah. It was tough then. I mean, it was either really early mornings or late nights, trying to get in the gym, and I also had developed a little bit of a meditation practice in college that I was trying to maintain throughout that, and also trying to maintain like eating well, because that job really makes you like go into seamless mode or Grubhub mode, Uber Eats mode. And so I was sort of like fighting all those things, but I was used to that because college also, you're like, everybody just wants to drink like a zillion beers and eat like shit. And I remember like a buddy of mine who's also kind of into his own well-being, like we were looking up like what's the healthiest liquor.
Yeah.
We were trying.
No,
I,
I remember. I remember that. I remember.
yeah,
Yeah, especially with like the rise of like um all the carbonated drinks and everything like that, and vodka sodas for a while. Like it just like you're just constantly on the lookout for like how can I spare the most calories and feel the best the next day.
yeah, we were really like we were into the weeds of like, okay, which of the like from a like toxicity standpoint,
Yeah.
like which if I'm consistently, and again just setting the bar like if I'm going to drink 4 nights a week aggressively, what would be the best drinks to have 4 nights a week aggressively?
And then you rave
Uh,
about it. Then you go about it and rave
yeah,
about it to other people being like, I figured it out. This is what
yeah,
you need to do.
yeah.
Uh,
You're actually going to want to make green tea and mix that with tequila.
exactly.
like,
Exactly. Exactly.
uh, like, oh yeah, your Red Bull vodka, no way. Yeah, the I guess the only point there is like I was spending an enormous amount of energy um, trying to be well. There's another part of the story that we don't need to get into in depth, but like I've always had just like weird stuff going on from like a kind of immunity standpoint. To this day, I haven't really gotten to the bottom of it. I just did the like extended immunity test, and I have the one thing that says, "Hey, you probably have an autoimmune disease." Mine is like through the roof, the ANA titer scan. But then the actual tests for all the autoimmunity diseases, I don't have any of them. So it's just been an ongoing like sense of exploration, or in that case, I guess, around inflammation. But all that is to say, I was no stranger to like a lifestyle that was not conducive to being healthy, while going out of my way to be in great shape, strong, able to do, kind of endurance feats and eat well and meditate and things like that. And so if you told me, which somebody, did tell me in the form of my now co-founder, like, hey, would you like your job to be based around this? It's like, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a return to self ultimately once you have the opportunity to do that. And so I can relate to that. And then you never want to give that. There's no dollar amount you could put on that. like at the
I
end
mean,
of the
I get
day.
asked all the time, like, would you go back to finance? It's like, no, never. Like, never. Like, there's other things out there that interest me a ton. I already mentioned cooking. I don't know that I'll spend the rest of my life in, fitness per se, but like, it will always, like, the bar for like what I'm willing to dedicate myself to is going to start at things I legitimately enjoy and find interesting.
Yeah. I think for the audience, we should definitely, I know I gave the bio up front. Let's talk about Somble really quick. And I need to hear it from you, from your mouth. Tell us exactly what Somble is all about. Tell us, the inception. I know you mentioned, it was your friend who brought it to you, but let's hear it directly from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the simplest level, like, okay, what does Somble do? Like, we have a tech platform that personal trainers and coaches can use to build their own training platform on top of. It's a full suite of tools that they can kind of put together however best suits their business and brand with their look and their feel, and then go, hey world, like, this is me. You can train with me here. And it's built for very busy people, non-tech savvy people, and really just meant to kind of like instantly enable them to start building a really potent training business across both virtual and in person. It was not always that. I think so. We started this a couple of years ago when it was during the pandemic, and my co-founder Ian, his now fiance, but at the time girlfriend, she was a yoga teacher and a health coach, and she had this like kind of mess of technology cobbled together to try to directly monetize basically like her Instagram following. And she also had a bunch of friends who were doing the same, and we were looking out at kind of like the spectrum of like what these people had as far as like, hey, this is my business. It was like websites with all of these repurposed like creator economy tools, put together in different configurations to be like, okay, you can pay me for this thing here or this thing here, or you can find my stream here. And that was like the tech side was very messy. And then you also had this like massive disparity in how much money people were making, which was like some people would go out and do things like, hey, hit this Zoom link, Venmo me $10, and then they make $900 an hour. Whereas others would be posting, a reel a day and just doing absolutely nothing. And it was like, so we're looking at that. Well, really, Ian's looking at that. And he calls me and he basically asked me, like, the shortest version of the question was kind of like, is there a Patreon for fitness? Like, is there a place where like coaches go to just like have their business, and like you as somebody who is maybe looking for a coach like that could find them? I was like, no, it's funny you ask. Like, there's a giant mess on the internet of information that you have to wade through like hours a week to try to get anything out of. That's one side. That's the like YouTube plus Instagram plus like all the different websites that have whether it's blog posts or research or exercise libraries. Then there's like podcasts. You can like wade through that, or you can spend a gajillion dollars on a personal trainer who might actually not be a great personal trainer. Like, the best case scenario is that you're like rich and know somebody who's got a good personal trainer. Like, that's how you're going to go get like great progressive training in whatever vertical that you're in, which is ridiculous because there's so much incredible information out there. So that was like my moment in the conversation where Ian's thinking about this very much through the lens of like, can we help these coaches make more money? Because it seems like it's right in front of them. They could be building a better business and they could be marketing themselves better, because it seems like some people want to pay these people. Like, why are they making that? The shortest way to look at that is like, how many people do you know who are willing to spend hundreds of dollars a month on training?
Yeah, not
Okay.
many.
Well, so I'd argue here though that like this was also coming from like the Goldman perspective at the time, like gym memberships in New York City for being a good example, right? Like going to be multiple hundreds of dollars. The I think like I can't remember the average or what it is now, but like there's a contingent of like the Gen Pop consumer that's got like, I mean, it's the average Gen Pop consumer. There's no issues, $40 to go to
Yeah, you have
like
the boutique
various
fitness, right? Like you have
right.
like the Soul Cycles. I mean, and I think you'll agree with me. This whole industry has continued to evolve probably since day one you were there. If you look back 10 years ago, 5 years ago, now, 10 years ago, everybody was spending $40 a day to go to a spin class or a hit class, wherever it was, to just try out all the new studios. Now it's a little bit of a different scene with regard. I'm sure COVID had a little bit of a shift there, but
Yeah, I guess like the only to just kind of like put a bow on that thought, it's like there's a lot of people who are willing to spend a lot of money on training, and there's not a lot of trainers who are making very good money.
that
And it's
makes
like
sense.
it's obviously more nuanced than that, as you mentioned, right? Like there's also a lot of people who are not willing to spend very much on training, but I would argue those people are not getting very much for the dollars that they are spending. So it felt like, and still to this day feels like, the more optimal thing would be like, can we pay coaches directly to get great training from them so that they make more and that I get access to that coach and progressive training and a community around it? And that's what eventually laddered up into like the dream that is now Somble, which is like, can you build like a true second choice for consumers? Like as a consumer, like Gen Pop does not look out and think of like the world of fitness as like the world of coaches. They look at it as like the world of brands, like gyms and studios and major apps. And but like the surface below that is millions of coaches who actually have that knowledge and actually have that those relationships to hold those clients accountable and actually drive change. And we're like, okay, it's like, some people like hotels, some people like Airbnbs. Like there's not the Airbnb option right now in the space, and the space is ripe for it, and it's a mess to build it, as I've been living for the last couple of years. But like, we want to elevate the independent coach so that they can earn more and deliver better training to people, so that great training and health and wellness becomes more accessible at massive, massive scale. And the way that we're trying to do that is by democratizing access to incredible training platforms for these coaches so they can go out and compete and win against the big dogs.
I feel like your obstacles have to have evolved as well. I'm sure the obstacles on day one are not the obstacles that you face now, and perhaps this kind of goes back to your prior career with regards to your ability to kind of like put out multiple fires at once and to navigate these obstacles. But talk to me a little bit about as of today where your biggest roadblocks are.
Like this is going to be such a tactical answer that it's almost lame, but like half the day is like like coaches offboard off of 5 platforms onto our one platform. This is the most fragmented industry you could imagine, not just from a tech perspective, but these coaches have like 3 jobs too. So like figuring out how to make that process extremely simple for them in onboarding them onto a product that is quite expansive is definitely a challenge. Day to day, I think that is one of the biggest things that we work on. It's just that it's solving that sort of like disaggregation issue. And that's I mean, in the beginning, we built a marketplace. Like if you hear the vision that I just laid out, it's like you kind of feel like it's supposed to be a marketplace. And like coaches don't want that. They want their own brand elevated, not necessarily to be a part of a brand. Like you can't just Substack this problem, like where everybody gets the same looking thing. So there's like the disaggregation thing. There's also like the brand elevation thing. It's like, how do we help non-technical busy people have a beautiful platform immediately without them having to do anything that looks better than what other people are spending months, if not years, trying to create? Like those are the very tactical things that we're doing. And then zooming out a level, it's like, this is the noisiest industry like you could, and it's also confusing. Like just because you have 100,000 followers on Instagram doesn't mean that you're going to sell a single program when you go to market with that thing. It's like, what's the difference between coaches who can make money, influencers who can make money coaching versus influencers who cannot? So therefore, like, who is our target audience? And for us, it's like, it's coaches, not influencers. And cutting through to those people at scale in a space where we go, hey, we do these 6 things, and in aggregate, it's like really potent together. But in every one of those verticals, there's 17 platforms that go, we just do that. So we're fighting all those guys for visibility on the resourcing front, or I guess the feature front. And then it's like you finally get the person and you have to disconnect them from all of their things. It's extremely involved at basically every level. But when you get it right, it's like, oh, you just solved the biggest problem for this person. Like they can just coach now, finally.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's a massive undertaking, and yeah, just hearing you talk about it is exciting. Like hearing you talk about it, and talk about how you're tackling it. It's it's like a sign of hope for for
It'd be
this.
pretty cool if it works.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a sign of hope that I think a lot of people, especially, this community of listeners, are interested in, because it's a problem. It's a problem that needs to be solved. Um, are you, when you think about the landscape, of people out there trying to attack this, you know, do you see any big competition right now, or are you guys really just kind of going at this right now, heads down?
It's the short answer is no. I do not see literally direct competition in the sense that we compete in every one of the verticals like viciously. Um, and there's also businesses that do exactly what we do, but for studios. They're and it's actually one of the biggest motivators that makes me like we got to see this thing through. It's like there's 100 reasons why you shouldn't do what we're doing. Like it's even now, like many of the biggest businesses on our platform are studios. And I'm like, I don't want to work with studios. Like the problem is not that studios need better tech. There's Mindbody and 100 Mindbody killers. So like, yeah, we're competing with Squarespace and Wix on like the front end landing page branding front. We're competing with 1,000 personal training platforms, 1,000 group programming platforms, scheduling platforms, course building platforms. Like, but nobody is putting these pieces together in a way that kind of like actually aligns with how a coach just runs a business now, which is not how a coach used to run a business. Like we call it the modern coach. It's like people used to just be like, I work at a gym and I do some training on the side. It was very one dimensional, and the tech treats them as one dimensional. It's why it's very vertical. And like we had direct competitors also. Some shut down, some pivoted straight into studios. Like I don't I see why people wouldn't want to do this. Like coaches' willingness to pay is very low. These are not people who are making a ton of
They're
money.
not making a ton of money, so they probably don't want to invest too much money.
Exactly. Right. Like as opposed to a studio that's making more money and therefore is
Yeah.
going to be willing to pay you more
The
even at a
studio's
percent of
path
your
of least
earnings.
resistance, it sounds like.
It is absolutely a
Yeah.
path of least resistance. And like we look at ourselves once a week, we're like, are we like digital studio platform now? Like, and it's like I get on every one of those demos and I'm like, to with the studio, I'm like, hey, we don't have like so many features you're expecting. They're like, yeah, but I saw somebody else doing this and I can do my videos and programming on here and my class booking. And like, yeah, that's the core value prop for an individual coach, which is why we built it like that. I guess that'll work for you. But yeah, it's certainly not the sexy problem to solve from a like business fundamentals standpoint. And so it's been our job to like survive and advance the ball forward as best we can in pursuit of something that does have sound business fundamentals and does really solve a problem fast for these coaches so that we can hit that sort of like mass adoption point. As I mentioned at the very beginning of this, like we're pre-product market fit. I don't, it's not like, it's far from perfect. But we just built the whole thing, anew from the ground up and launched our 2.0 3 weeks ago. And we're iterating literally daily, just trying to get to that point where like, okay, like this is the biggest no-brainer of all time for every single coach. And there's a lot of them out there.
Awesome. I want to make sure that as we kind of round things out here, that we learn some of the lessons that particularly apply to you. And now, if you look back as a founder, thinking back to, you've had such an eclectic source of learnings throughout your lifetime. When you think about the influence of your father, watching him, when you think about the um, overarching theme that you were trying to find yourself within those early years in college, moving from potentially going to special forces into the world of finance, and then thinking about navigating the landscape of a Goldman Sachs. What have you learned the most about yourself as a founder these last couple of years?
Yeah. I mean, you just got to find like whatever thing is going to push you as hard as you can be pushed and make you better for it. And like, I didn't know what that thing was for so long. Like, how was I actually going to go and log that like 14 or 16-hour day, not feel like it burnt me out and nearly killed me, but make me, wake up the next morning and be excited to do it again? Cause like that hard work, it is going to be the prerequisite to any sort of success. And I see people do it with that Steve Jobs archetype we talked about earlier, like that just raw intensity. I see people do it with extreme mindfulness. I see people who do it and it looks like it's all ego. And I see every like version of that in between. But you're just constantly in pursuit of that better version of yourself that's going to inspire the team, that's going to execute a little bit tighter with a little more focus. And you just, every opportunity is like, or sorry, everything you experience is an opportunity to get closer to that. And you have to like kind of feel in your bones that you're not there yet, and you have to be comfortable with that. And I think that the entrepreneurial journey, and arguably the journey of life, has something to do with like that constant progression, but peace during the process.
I love that. And then my final question to you is around that sense of fulfillment. How fulfilled do you feel, waking up now daily, working for Somble? And how do you continue to fill your cup?
Yeah, more fulfilled than ever. I think I feel like I'm looking at these things. I can look back and smile at things that used to give me like a lot of pain and a lot of angst. I genuinely love talking to people and trying to solve problems with other people. And I get to do that all day. I genuinely love moving my body, especially in kind of like a communal format. And I get to do that all the time in this role. So I think the more I can just sort of sit with those things and continue to pursue those things, and maybe build something that's useful for other folks, like the more fulfilled I will be. Candidly, I'm still on pre-seed startup salary. I have a wife. We want to have kids soon, like not that soon, but relatively soon. And like, I'm going to have some base level needs that I'll need to meet over the next few years to be in a place to do that. And that makes me anxious. But I also have amazing mentors who explain what that process is going to be like. And I see more fulfillment on that side in the future as well. So I just want to kind of like keep my head down's the wrong word. Just like, it's almost the opposite. It's like eyes wide open, pursue these things, vigorously, and try to like show up better every day at those things, and bring more of that energy into my work and into life, and let those things intermingle. I kind of love that. So yeah, I feel more fulfilled than ever. And it also feels like there's lots of room here, especially as I progress Somble and progress my family life.
Dom, I really appreciate you, man. I appreciate you because for the last hour, you've brought nothing but rawness and authenticity. And,
Thank you.
you really like, you kept it real. And I think that says a lot. I mean, a lot of the things that you've discussed, I know that I could relate to from past experiences. And I know that a lot of our listeners could be nodding their heads, just kind of listening to you. And, the best part about, your vulnerability here is the fact that you acknowledge, it's a work in progress, and you're continuing to put the work in daily. And despite the fact that you don't know what the finish line looks like, you don't even know if there is a finish line, it's about, showing up daily and doing the work and staying committed. So I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on today and for opening up with us.
Thank you so much for having me and for the great questions. It was a pleasure.
You got it.